Welcome, James, for DHL team behind the team chat. And as the statement suggests, we are celebrating the team that builds the Mumbai Indian team, has been so successful for the last so many years. You are called the commander of the ship, and that's what all players tell me. And that's because you have a clear philosophy of fielding, and you have a leadership chain, and you are on top of the chain. Is that so?
Well, if that's what the players tell you, then who am I to disagree with that? But I think when I joined in 2017, I think that was a nickname that was given to me, I think, by Surya Kumar Yadav, who was a little bit taken by my energetic fielding activities and also my consistent loud voice. So I became the commander of the ship, yeah, for sure.
So take us through your broad fielding philosophy that you probably discussed with the captain, and what is this command of leadership that everyone talks about?
There's two parts to that. I like to share a presentation with the group that's built around the team because fielding is the only thing that the team do together in cricket. You know, obviously batting's done in partnerships, bowling's done in partnerships, but very much an individual thing, whereas fielding, it is a team activity. So I try to get across that everybody's involved. I use the TEAM philosophy, which together everybody achieves more. And I like to break that down to T means training, E means energy, A is all about attitude and awareness and anticipation, and M is about the measures that I take to make sure that they're delivering on the ones above.
You know, I remember speaking to John Wright years back, and he said that I believe in individual leadership units, the batting captain, the bowling captain, the fielding captain. Yep. Tell me how you also have an hierarchy of fielding. How does that work?
Yeah, well, out on the field, there's a clear, for me, a clear leadership command. It starts with the bowler, because he's the one who's got his plan that's preset in his mind. He then has to communicate that to the captain. The wicketkeeper needs to be part of that because he needs to be organising the field in the background as well. And then we have fielding captains who just sort of stand back. You know, they're not involved with the bowler at that respective time, so they can just make sure, yes, we've got the right people in the right areas for this coming over. So there's 4 clear, chains of command in that situation.
Amazing, because it's amazing for a fan to know, right, that there is so much of thought, and that's why team behind the team is going, even in the aspect of fielding, because we as fans realize that, hey, we are seeing the 6'5" Cameron Green down in the long off region, then we see Tim David at long off, or vice versa, and we are knowing now the logic that, hey, these long catches are going to be the game changer catches. Do you train and plan for this as well?
Yeah,
because this anticipation of the, and there's a teamwork involved there, there's an anticipation of the rope there. How does that a tactical thing happen?
Yeah, for sure. It all comes back to the bowling plan, and ultimately if the bowler doesn't deliver where he wants to do, there is missing execution in all stages. So, but ideally we set the plan up for the perfect delivery, and then we have the right people in the right areas. And like you say, some guys have got physical strengths that you want to utilise. For example, if we're playing on a ground where the boundaries are wide square of the wicket, then our plan might be to use the square boundaries. So then we'll get our bigger and more competent fielders on the square boundaries. But most of the time, the boundaries are of an equal size. So you want the guy to try and hit the ball down the ground, and that's where you position, the guys who are more likely to take those opportunities. Polly's done that for years for us, and obviously now we've got people like Cameron Green and Tim David in the team, and their skills are of that nature.
I remember you mentioning somewhere that sometimes it's about the perspective, and you did work on this aspect about, you said that sometimes the catches that come in a match are not the catches that you practice. Yeah. What's your theory on that?
Well, I think a lot of coaches, will go onto YouTube, or we'll go searching for ideas of, trying to make the field in practice a little bit more entertaining. Yeah. So the coaches become more like entertainers rather than actual coaches. And there is a lot of, spectacular activity that does go on, and you can replicate that if you want. But you've also got to understand where the level of your group is at, and try and make sure that they can do the basics really well to start with before you start expanding, that creativity or their imaginations. That will come. But it's always about nailing the basics, because the basic catches are the ones that come predominantly in the game. And as coaches, we've all fallen into those traps, you know, early in your career. You know, you want your players to have a great time and you want them to be having fun. So sometimes you do go a little bit too over the top with, you know, trying to create activities that perhaps don't replicate what happens in the game.
I see you making notes all the time. I see you, you just showed me an Excel sheet which probably looked like an Excel sheet of a $1 billion company, very complicated and stuff like that. But that's so much of data, and you know, it amazes me that you know what has happened with the fielding aspect of every player in the MI team for all the games. How does that work? And give me an example of how data worked in a particular case.
Yeah, well, it's just a simple, really. It tries to covers off the basics of the game. It tries to covers off their ground field and execution. It covers off their diving and sliding, commitment, and obviously their execution. It covers off the catches, whether we take them, whether we drop them. If we do drop them, how hard were they? And then it covers off the throwing quality as well. So how effective do we return the ball back to the wicketkeeper? How effective do we hit direct hits? And then it covers off a little bit of team aspect as well. Do we work in 2s and 3s? Do we back up in groups? So it's very simple in terms of how I collaborate all that, but then I collaborate it to try and then create coaching points, discussions with players. So for example, if the ball is getting hit to a player 10 times in a game and he's misfielding it 2 or 3 times, I can then have a coaching conversation to say, hey, do you realise the ball got hit to you 10 times in the last game and you misfielded it 3 times? What were your thoughts on that? And then if then that needs to be turned into a training session or a training point, we can then go ahead and do that. But you know, for me it's a simple sheet that then turns into quite a large amount of information, which at the end of the day that it doesn't lie. But for me it's about trying to create conversations with players and then turn it into some training.
That brings me to that last point, and I'll quote John T. Rhodes where he says that it's not about catching the ball, but it's about reaching where the ball is. And that requires athleticism, that requires attitude. And great fielders always say that the difference between a good fielder and an average fielder is the good fielder is wanting the ball to come to them. And that helps them, you know, get the anticipation right, the angles right. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, that athletic side of it is really important. And if you look back over history, who guys have, you know, maybe transcended decades and eras, they've all been brilliant athletes. You know, when I first started taking notice would have been back in the 70s, actually. That's how old I am. Viv Richards, Clive Lloyd in the West Indies, Colin Bland was a South African, Derek Randall was an Englishman. There was always some great athleticism about them before you noticed their fielding skills, and then as we've come through the eras, Jonty himself, you know, and then into the modern era, you know, you've got people like Virat Kohli, your Jadejas, your Ben Stokeses, the Ricky Pontins, you know, their athleticism has been the base for their fielding excellence.
Thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts, because truly it's the team behind the team.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.